Let me ask you something. What do you think your brain is doing right now at this very moment as you watch this video? You might say it is helping you see, hear, and understand words. And you would be right. But here is something that most people never think about. Right now, even as you sit still, your brain is doing something remarkable. It is working. It is filtering. It is building. It is protecting itself. And every single night when you close your eyes and drift off to sleep, your brain goes into what I like to call its most powerful repair mode. This is not a poetic idea. This is real, measurable biology. And what you eat in the hours before you sleep has a direct influence on how well that repair process actually works. Most of us spend a lot of time thinking about sleep. We worry about getting enough. We buy pillows and blackout curtains and sleep masks. We take melatonin. We read articles about blue light and screen time. But almost nobody talks about what we put in our bodies before we sleep and how profoundly that affects what the brain is able to accomplish overnight. Tonight, that changes. Because once you understand the connection between your evening meal and your brain's natural repair systems, you will never look at your kitchen the same way again. Here is what I want you to hold in your mind as we go through this together. Your brain is not just an organ that thinks. It is a living, dynamic system with its own maintenance schedule. And that maintenance schedule runs almost entirely at night while you sleep. The brain has a dedicated cleaning crew, a biological waste removal system that activates during deep sleep. It has chemical messengers that seal and strengthen memories you made during the day. It has repair processes that patch damaged cells and reduce harmful inflammation. All of this happens while you are unconscious and resting. But here is the critical part. All of these systems need raw materials. They need nutrients. They need specific compounds that your body cannot make entirely on its own. And the only way to give your brain those materials is through food. Now think about your typical evening. Maybe you have dinner around 6 or 7 o'clock. Maybe you snack on something after. Maybe you skip dinner sometimes or eat something quick and easy because you are tired from the day. Most people, when they choose what to eat at night, are thinking about hunger, about taste, about convenience. Almost nobody is thinking about giving their brain what it needs for overnight repair. And that gap, that disconnect between what we eat and what our brain actually needs at night is costing millions of people their cognitive health, is one of the most overlooked factors in memory, focus, mental clarity, and long-term brain protection. And the good news, the genuinely exciting news that it is completely within your control to change it. I have spent decades studying how the human body defends and heals itself. I wrote a book called Eat to Beat Disease, and the core message I tried to share in that book is one I believe deeply. Your body has 5 natural defense systems. It can grow new blood vessels to feed healthy tissue. It can activate stem cells to repair and regenerate organs. It can use the microbiome in your gut to regulate immunity and brain chemistry. It can control inflammation with extraordinary precision when given the right tools. And it can turn cancer-related genes on and off depending on what you eat. These are not theories. These are systems that scientists have been documenting for years. And when it comes to the brain, all 5 of these systems are active every single night. So let us start at the beginning. Let us talk about what actually happens in your brain while you sleep, because understanding this will make everything else in this video make sense. When you fall into deep sleep, a phase called slow wave sleep, your brain neurons actually shrink slightly. This is not a problem. It is intentional. When neurons shrink, they open up tiny spaces between them. And through those spaces flows a fluid called cerebrospinal fluid. Think of it like a river of water washing through the streets of a city in the middle of the night, cleaning up all the garbage that accumulated during the day. This cleaning system has a name. Scientists call it the glymphatic system. The word glymphatic comes from glial cells, which are the brain's support cells, and lymphatic, referring to the body's waste removal network. Together, they form a dedicated brain detox system that operates almost exclusively during sleep. The glymphatic system removes metabolic waste products that build up in the brain during waking hours. One of the most important things it clears is a protein called beta amyloid. You may have heard that name before. Beta amyloid plaques are strongly associated with Alzheimer's disease. When the glymphatic system works efficiently night after night, it washes away beta amyloid before it can accumulate. When the system is impaired, whether by poor sleep, chronic inflammation, or nutritional deficiency, beta amyloid begins to build up. Over years and decades, this accumulation becomes one of the hallmarks of cognitive decline. So the question becomes, how do we support the glymphatic system? How do we make sure it runs well every night? The answer, to a significant degree, lives in your kitchen. But the glymphatic system is only one piece of the overnight repair process. while your brain is being cleaned, it is also doing something extraordinary with your memories. During the day, your hippocampus, a small seahorse-shaped structure deep in your brain, acts like a temporary notepad. It jots down your experiences, conversations, and information as you go. Then at night, during a phase called REM sleep, the brain replays those experiences and transfers them to long-term storage in the cortex. This process is called memory consolidation. It is how what you learn today becomes something you actually remember next week, next month, next year. Memory consolidation requires precise chemical signaling. It requires neurotransmitters like acetylcholine. It requires sleep architecture that includes the proper balance of deep sleep and REM cycles. And it requires anti-inflammatory conditions in the brain so that nothing disrupts the process. There is more. During sleep, the brain also repairs myelin, the white fatty sheath that wraps around nerve fibers the way insulation wraps around electrical wire. Myelin is essential for fast, clear communication between brain cells. When myelin degrades, signals become slower and less reliable. You might experience this as brain fog, slower processing, or difficulty recalling words. Myelin production increases significantly during sleep, and it depends on specific nutrients, particularly omega-3 fatty acids and B vitamins to do its job properly. If those nutrients are absent or insufficient, myelin repair is compromised. Night after night, small deficits accumulate. The brain also manages inflammation overnight. Chronic low-grade inflammation in the brain, called neuroinflammation, is now recognized as one of the central most forms of cognitive decline, including Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and vascular dementia. Sleep is when the brain has the best opportunity to quiet this inflammation, largely through the activity of microglia, the brain's immune cells. Microglia patrol brain tissue, removing damaged cells and pathogens. They rely on anti-inflammatory signals, many of which come from bioactive compounds in specific foods, to do their work without causing collateral damage to healthy tissue. Now, here is where everything begins to connect. Every one of these overnight processes, lymphatic cleaning, memory consolidation, myelin repair, neuroinflammation control, depends on the nutritional environment of the brain. The brain consumes about 20% of your total caloric energy, even though it only makes up about 2% of your body weight. It is an extraordinarily hungry organ. And at night, when it is doing its most intensive repair work, it needs specific types of fuel, not just calories, specific bioactive compounds, specific nutrients, specific molecules that speak the language of brain biology. This is exactly why what you eat before bed matters so profoundly. The foods you consume in the evening hours are the last nutrients your body processes before that critical repair window opens. They influence blood sugar stability overnight, which affects the depth and continuity of sleep. They influence the availability of neurotransmitter precursors, which affects memory consolidation. They influence inflammation levels, which affects how effectively the brain can perform its cleanup and repair. They influence the health of your gut microbiome, which sends chemical signals directly to your brain through what scientists call the gut-brain axis. I want to pause here and make something very clear. I am not talking about some fad diet or a miracle supplement. I am talking about the deep science of how your body's own natural systems work, and how the foods you choose can either nourish those systems or starve them. The brain's repair capacity is one of the most powerful things in human biology, but it is not automatic. It is conditional. It depends on inputs, and you have direct control over some of the most important inputs every single day, every single night. Over the next several parts of this video, we are going to go deeper into the science. We are going to look at what exactly happens to your brain when it does not get the nutrients it needs at night. We are going to look at the specific foods that science has identified as powerful allies for overnight brain repair. And we are going to give you a practical, simple, enjoyable approach to adding these foods into your evening routine in a way that actually works for real life. Whether you are 30 years old and trying to protect your future brain health, or you are 60 or 70 and concerned about memory and cognitive sharpness, what we are about to discuss is relevant and actionable for you right now. So stay with me. This is not about being perfect or following a complicated program. This is about understanding your body well enough to make a few simple, powerful choices that compound over time. Because the truth is, your brain wants to repair itself. It has spent millions of years of evolution developing these extraordinary systems. It just needs you to give it the right tools. And those tools are closer than you think. Let us find out exactly what they are. Now that we understand what the brain is trying to accomplish during sleep, let us go deeper into the science of what can go wrong and why what you eat is so central to the solution. Because here is the thing about the human brain. It did not evolve in a world of processed food and chronic stress and irregular sleep schedules. It evolved in a world where food was whole, varied, and nutrient-dense. A world where humans moved their bodies throughout the day, ate seasonally, and went to sleep when the sun went down. Our brains developed their repair systems in that environment. And today, for millions of people, the nutritional environment the brain experiences every night looks nothing like what it evolved to expect. That mismatch is at the heart of why so many people experience memory loss, brain fog, and cognitive decline at younger and younger ages. Let us start with blood sugar. This might seem like a surprising place to begin a conversation about brain repair, but blood sugar stability overnight is one of the most underappreciated factors in brain health. Your brain is the most glucose-dependent organ in your body. It does not store fuel the way muscles do. It relies on a steady supply of glucose from the bloodstream at all times. During sleep, this is especially important because the brain is actively working, running its repair programs, and it needs consistent energy to do so. When blood sugar drops too low overnight, a condition called nocturnal hypoglycemia, the brain can partially awaken. Sleep becomes fragmented. You may not even fully wake up, but your brain cycles out of deep sleep and into lighter, less restorative stages. The glymphatic cleaning system, which is most active during deep, slow wave sleep, cannot do its job if you keep cycling in and out of light sleep. Night after night, the brain accumulates more waste than it can clear. On the other side, eating a large amount of refined carbohydrates or sugary foods before bed causes a blood sugar spike followed by a crash. This spike triggers inflammation. It promotes the release of insulin, which, when chronically elevated, is associated with insulin resistance in the brain. Insulin resistance in the brain is now so strongly associated with Alzheimer's disease that some researchers have informally called Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes. When brain cells become resistant to insulin, they lose one of their key pathways for taking in energy. The cells become starved for fuel even when glucose is technically available. Cell communication slows, repair processes are impaired, and the risk of neurodegeneration rises. This is why the quality of the carbohydrates you eat in the evening and the overall composition of your evening meal has such a significant influence on what happens in your brain overnight. A dinner that causes a sharp blood sugar spike followed by a crash creates a metabolically hostile environment for overnight brain repair. A dinner that provides stable blood sugar, healthy fats, and specific bioactive compounds creates the opposite. It creates conditions where the brain can run its maintenance programs fully and efficiently. Now let us talk about inflammation, because this is probably the single most important biochemical concept in brain aging. Inflammation is not inherently bad. Acute inflammation is a healthy response. When you get a cut, immune cells rush to the site, create swelling and redness, fight potential infection, and then stand down when the threat is over. That is healthy, purposeful inflammation. The problem is chronic, low-grade inflammation that never fully resolves. Modern diets high in processed foods, refined oils, excess sugar, and artificial additives are strongly pro-inflammatory. They continuously activate the immune system in a low-level way that accumulates damage over time. In the brain, this chronic inflammation is called neuroinflammation. The microglia, which are the brain's resident immune cells, become what scientists call hyperactivated. Instead of quietly patrolling and performing their normal maintenance duties, they begin releasing pro-inflammatory chemicals called cytokines in excess. These cytokines damage neurons. They disrupt the blood-brain barrier, which is the protective membrane that separates the brain from the general bloodstream. When the blood-brain barrier is compromised, toxins and pathogens that normally cannot enter the brain gain access. This triggers more inflammation, which causes more damage, which triggers more inflammation. It becomes a destructive cycle that, once established, is very difficult to break. The foods you eat before bed influence the inflammatory state of your body during the critical overnight repair window. If you eat foods that are high in inflammatory compounds, such as processed snacks, fried foods, refined sugars, or excessive alcohol, you are essentially sending a message to your immune system at exactly the moment when the brain needs peace and quiet to do its repair work. Conversely, if you eat foods rich in polyphenols, omega-3 fatty acids, and prebiotic fiber, you are sending an anti-inflammatory signal that actually helps create the right environment for the brain to heal. Let me take a moment to explain polyphenols, because they come up repeatedly when we talk about brain protective foods, and I want to make sure you truly understand why they matter. Polyphenols are a family of naturally occurring compounds found in plants. There are thousands of them. You encounter them every time you eat berries, dark leafy greens, nuts, seeds, olive oil, dark chocolate, green tea, herbs, and spices. For decades, scientists studied polyphenols primarily for their antioxidant properties. their ability to neutralize harmful free radicals that damage cells. But we now know that polyphenols do something far more sophisticated. They act as signaling molecules. They communicate directly with your genes, activating protective pathways and quieting harmful ones. They cross the blood-brain barrier and work directly in brain tissue. They reduce neuroinflammation. They stimulate the production of BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is sometimes called fertilizer for the brain. BDNF promotes the growth of new neurons and synaptic connections. It is one of the most powerful molecules in the brain's natural repair toolkit. Now let us discuss the gut-brain axis, because this is an area of research that has genuinely transformed our understanding of brain health in the last decade. Your gut contains approximately 100 trillion microorganisms. Bacteria, viruses, fungi, and other microbes that collectively make up your gut microbiome. These organisms are not passive passengers. They are active biological partners. They digest food, produce vitamins, regulate your immune system, and communicate with your brain through a dedicated communication highway called the vagus nerve. They also produce neurotransmitters, including serotonin, dopamine, and GABA. In fact, approximately 90% of your body's serotonin is produced in the gut, not in the brain. What you eat at night directly feeds your gut microbiome. Fiber-rich foods, particularly fermentable prebiotic fibers found in vegetables, legumes, and whole grains, feed the beneficial bacteria that produce short-chain fatty acids. These short-chain fatty acids, particularly one called butyrate, are now understood to be powerful brain protectors. Butyrate reduces neuroinflammation, supports the integrity of the blood-brain barrier, promotes the production of BDNF, and even influences the expression of genes related to memory and learning. Conversely, a gut microbiome starved of fiber, one fed primarily on processed food and sugar, shifts toward producing pro-inflammatory signals that travel up the gut-brain axis and contribute to cognitive decline. There is another biological process I want to explain that is directly relevant to brain repair at night, and that is the process of autophagy. The word autophagy comes from the Greek, meaning self-eating, which sounds alarming, but is actually one of the most beneficial things your body does. Autophagy is a cellular recycling process. Your cells, including brain cells, continuously produce damaged proteins, misfolded proteins, and worn-out cellular components. Autophagy breaks these down and either recycles their raw materials or clears them completely. When autophagy functions well, the brain stays clean at the cellular level. When autophagy is impaired, damaged proteins accumulate inside neurons, contributing to the kind of cellular dysfunction we see in neurodegenerative diseases. Autophagy is enhanced during periods of low insulin, which typically occur during sleep, especially if you allow enough time between your last meal and sleep onset. This is one reason why eating a very large, carbohydrate-heavy meal immediately before bed can be problematic. It keeps insulin elevated, which suppresses autophagy right at the window when the brain needs it most. On the other hand, a moderate, nutrient-dense evening meal eaten 2 to 3 hours before sleep, one that includes healthy fats and specific plant compounds, can actually support the conditions that allow autophagy to proceed efficiently. Let us also talk about the role of specific nutrients. Omega-3 fatty acids, particularly DHA and EPA found primarily in fatty fish, are not optional for the brain. The brain is approximately 60% fat by dry weight, and DHA is the most abundant structural fat in the cerebral cortex. Every neuron membrane contains DHA. It is what makes those membranes fluid and flexible, allowing for efficient chemical signaling between brain cells. When DHA is abundant, neurons communicate quickly and clearly. When it is deficient, membranes become rigid, signaling slows, and the risk of cognitive decline increases. Importantly, DHA also has direct anti-inflammatory effects in the brain. It is a precursor to molecules called resolvins and protectins, which are biochemical mediators that actually help the brain resolve and clear inflammation. These are not just compounds that reduce inflammation the way an anti-inflammatory drug might. They actively resolve it, meaning they facilitate the cleanup process and help the brain return to a baseline of health. Magnesium is another nutrient that deserves special attention in the context of overnight brain repair. Magnesium is involved in over 300 enzymatic reactions in the body. In the brain specifically, it plays a critical role in regulating MDA receptors, which are glutamate receptors involved in synaptic plasticity, which is the brain's ability to strengthen and modify connections based on learning and experience. When magnesium levels are adequate, it actually partially blocks MDA receptors at rest, preventing excessive neuronal excitation. This is important because chronically overactivated MDA receptors contribute to a form of cellular damage called excitotoxicity, which is implicated in neurodegenerative diseases. A large percentage of American adults, some estimates say up to 50%, are deficient in magnesium. This deficiency is almost entirely driven by diet, specifically by the displacement of magnesium, rich whole foods with processed foods that contain very little magnesium. Melatonin is something most people associate with sleep onset, and yes, it is the hormone that signals to your body that it is time to sleep. But melatonin is also a powerful antioxidant that works directly in brain tissue. The pineal gland produces melatonin in response to darkness, and its levels rise in the evening and peak in the early hours of the night. What many people do not know is that certain foods naturally contain melatonin or compounds that support melatonin production. Tart cherries are one of the best known examples. Walnuts also contain measurable melatonin, so does rice in smaller amounts. When you eat these foods in the evening, you are providing your body with melatonin precursors and direct melatonin that can enhance the depth and quality of sleep, which in turn enhances the effectiveness of every overnight brain repair process we have discussed. Tryptophan is an amino acid that serves as a precursor to both serotonin and melatonin. Your body cannot make tryptophan. You must get it from food. Tryptophan-rich foods eaten in the evening, in the right nutritional context, can support the production of melatonin in the hours that follow, helping you fall asleep more easily and sleep more deeply. The conversion of tryptophan to serotonin and then to melatonin requires certain cofactors, including vitamin B6 and magnesium, which is another reason why a broad nutrient base in the evening meal matters. These nutrients work synergistically. They depend on each other. A deficiency in one can impair the entire pathway. Vitamin E is a fat-soluble antioxidant that accumulates in cell membranes throughout the body, including in the brain. It protects polyunsaturated fatty acids, including the DHA in neuron membranes, from oxidative damage. Research has shown associations between adequate vitamin E intake and reduced risk of cognitive decline, while severe vitamin E deficiency can cause neurological damage. The best food sources of vitamin E include nuts and seeds, particularly almonds and sunflower seeds, as well as avocado and olive oil. These foods also provide healthy monounsaturated fats that support overall brain health, making them excellent choices for evening nutrition. B vitamins, as a group, are absolutely central to brain function. B12 is required for the production of myelin, and deficiency leads to neurological symptoms including memory problems, numbness, and cognitive impairment. B9 folate is essential for DNA repair and the production of neurotransmitters. B6 is involved in the synthesis of serotonin, dopamine, and GABA. Niacin, which is vitamin B3, is involved in the repair of DNA damage in brain cells. When any of these are deficient, the downstream effects on brain function can be significant and, if prolonged, potentially irreversible. The richest food sources of B vitamins include leafy green vegetables, legumes, whole grains, eggs, fish, and dairy products. Now, I want to be honest with you about something because I believe that honesty is the foundation of trustworthy health information. Much of what I have described in this section is based on converging lines of evidence from cell biology, animal studies, epidemiological studies in humans, and clinical trials. The science of nutrition and the brain is complex. It is difficult to study in controlled ways. Individual genetics, gut microbiome composition, overall diet patterns, sleep environment, stress levels, exercise habits, and many other factors all interact. No single food is a magic cure. No single nutrient will reverse cognitive decline by itself. What the evidence does show, convincingly and consistently, is that the overall nutritional environment of the brain matters enormously, that anti-inflammatory, nutrient-dense diets protect the brain over time, that specific bioactive compounds found in whole plant foods support the brain's natural repair systems, and that the evening meal, the last nutritional input before the overnight repair window, is a uniquely important opportunity that most people are simply not taking advantage of. Now we arrive at the heart of this video. We have laid the scientific foundation. We understand what the brain is doing at night. We understand what can go wrong and why. Now let us talk about 5 specific foods that science has identified as genuinely powerful allies for overnight brain repair. I want to be clear about something before we begin. These are not random superfoods chosen because they are trendy or exotic. These are foods backed by a substantial body of research. Foods that contain specific compounds that interact with real biological systems in the brain. I am going to explain the science behind each one in a way that is clear, honest, and grounded in what we actually know. The first food is Tart cherries. I want you to pay close attention to this one because it surprises a lot of people. Tart cherries, also known as sour cherries, are one of the few foods that naturally contain meaningful levels of melatonin. Several well-designed human studies have examined the effects of tart cherry juice on sleep quality, and the results are consistently positive. In studies published in respected journals, Adults who consumed tart cherry juice twice daily showed increases in sleep time, improvements in sleep efficiency, meaning the percentage of time in bed actually spent sleeping, and reductions in daytime napping. These improvements are attributed to the combined effect of naturally occurring melatonin in the cherries and polyphenols, particularly anthocyanins, which have anti-inflammatory and antioxidant effects in the brain. The anthocyanins in tart cherries are a family of polyphenols that give the fruit its deep red color. These compounds cross the blood-brain barrier and have been shown in animal studies and cell studies to reduce oxidative stress in neurons, inhibit the enzymes that drive neuroinflammation, and protect against beta amyloid accumulation. In human epidemiological studies, higher consumption of anthocyanin-rich foods is associated with slower rates of cognitive decline. The combination of sleep-enhancing melatonin and brain-protective anthocyanins makes tart cherries uniquely well suited for the evening. They address multiple aspects of overnight brain repair simultaneously. Improving the depth and duration of sleep improves the effectiveness of the glymphatic system. Reducing neuroinflammation makes the overall brain environment more conducive to repair and memory consolidation. Tart cherry juice is widely available in American grocery stores and health food shops. You can find it in the juice aisle or the health section. Look for unsweetened versions or versions with minimal added sugar, because you do not want to counteract the benefits with a blood sugar spike. A small glass, 4 to 8 ounces, consumed about an hour before bed is the amount used in most studies. Alternatively, you can eat a handful of dried tart cherries or fresh ones when they are in season. Frozen tart cherries are another excellent option and are available year-round in most major supermarkets. The second food is walnuts. I have a particular affection for walnuts in the context of brain health, and once you understand the biology, I think you will too. Walnuts are one of the very few plant foods that contain significant levels of ALA, alpha-linolenic acid, which is the plant-based omega-3 fatty acid. Your body can convert some ALA into DHA and EPA, the long-chain omega-3s that are most directly beneficial to the brain, though the conversion rate is not highly efficient. More importantly, walnuts contain a unique combination of polyphenols, vitamin E, and folate that work together to support brain health in multiple ways simultaneously. A study conducted at the University of California, Los Angeles, using data from the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, found that adults who ate walnuts showed significantly better performance on cognitive tests, including memory, concentration, and processing speed. The researchers estimated that the association was equivalent to about 5 years of cognitive protection. A clinical trial published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition followed participants over 2 years and found that those who consumed walnuts regularly showed measurable differences in cognitive function compared to the control group. The specific compounds responsible appear to include elagitannins, polyphenols found almost exclusively in walnuts among common tree nuts, which are converted by gut bacteria into urolithins. Urolithins have been shown to promote autophagy in neurons, the cellular recycling process I described earlier, and to reduce neuroinflammation. Walnuts also contain melatonin in measurable quantities, though less than tart cherries. They contain significant magnesium, which supports sleep quality and MDA receptor regulation. They contain vitamin B6, which supports melatonin synthesis. And their fat content, primarily healthy unsaturated fats, helps with the absorption of fat-soluble nutrients, including vitamin E and vitamin K. A small handful of walnuts, roughly 1 ounce or about 14 walnut halves, eaten as part of an evening snack or after dinner, provides a genuinely impressive array of brain-supportive nutrients in a simple, convenient, and enjoyable form. One practical note: raw or lightly roasted walnuts are preferable to heavily salted or commercially flavored varieties. High heat can damage some of the delicate omega-3 fatty acids and polyphenols. You can store walnuts in the refrigerator or freezer to prevent the healthy fats from becoming rancid, which happens faster than with most other nuts due to their high polyunsaturated fat content. The third food is fatty fish, specifically salmon, sardines, mackerel, and trout. I am going to spend a bit more time on this one because the evidence here is, in my view, among the strongest and most consistent in the entire nutrition and brain health literature. Fatty fish are the single best dietary source of the long-chain omega-3 fatty acids DHA and EPA. As I explained earlier, DHA is a structural component of neuron membranes. It is what makes those membranes fluid and responsive. EPA has potent anti-inflammatory effects throughout the body and brain. Together, DHA and EPA are among the most extensively studied nutrients for brain health. The evidence connecting omega-3 fatty acid consumption with cognitive protection is striking. Large epidemiological studies have consistently found that people who eat fatty fish regularly have lower rates of cognitive decline and dementia. A major study known as the Chicago Health and Aging Project followed thousands of participants over several years and found that eating fish just once a week was associated with a significantly slower rate of cognitive decline compared to eating fish less than once a week. A meta-analysis of multiple clinical trials found that omega-3 supplementation improved memory performance in healthy older adults. Another study published in Neurology found that higher blood levels of DHA were associated with greater brain volume in key cognitive regions, including the hippocampus, and better performance on cognitive tests. The mechanisms are well understood. DHA reduces the production of inflammatory cytokines that activate microglia and damage neurons. It is a precursor to resolvins and protectins that actively resolve neuroinflammation. It maintains the structural integrity of synaptic membranes, which is essential for the rapid, precise signaling required during memory consolidation. EPA helps regulate the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which governs the stress response, reducing cortisol and supporting the kind of calm, stable neurochemistry that allows for effective sleep and brain repair. Eating fatty fish for dinner or even as a late afternoon meal provides your body with DHA and EPA that will be circulating during the overnight repair window. Salmon is probably the most accessible option for most Americans, and wild-caught salmon tends to have higher omega-3 levels than farm-raised, though both provide meaningful amounts. Sardines are another exceptional choice. They are less expensive than salmon, highly sustainable, and extraordinarily nutrient-dense, providing omega-3s, vitamin D, vitamin B12, calcium, and selenium in a small package. Mackerel is used widely in Mediterranean and Asian cuisines and is delicious grilled or smoked. Trout is mild-flavored, widely available, and excellent prepared simply with olive oil and herbs. For people who genuinely cannot eat fish, whether due to allergy, preference, or access, algae-based DHA supplements are a scientifically valid alternative. Fish actually get their DHA by eating algae, so going directly to the algae source bypasses the fish entirely while still providing the DHA the brain needs. Plant-based omega-3 supplements derived from algae are now widely available and have been shown in research to raise blood DHA levels effectively. The fourth food is leafy green vegetables, particularly spinach, kale, arugula, collard greens, and Swiss chard. I know this might sound less exciting than some of the other foods I have mentioned, but please hear me out because the evidence for leafy greens and brain health is exceptionally compelling and the mechanisms are beautifully interconnected with everything we have discussed. A landmark study from Rush University Medical Center, following more than 900 older adults for up to 10 years, found that people who ate 1 to 2 servings of leafy greens per day had the cognitive performance of someone 11 years younger than people who ate few or no leafy greens. 11 years. That is not a trivial difference. That is the difference between a 65-year-old brain and a 54-year-old brain. And it was driven specifically by dietary pattern. The researchers identified several specific compounds in leafy greens that appeared responsible for this protective effect. Vitamin K1, found abundantly in leafy greens, is involved in the activation of sphingolipids, a type of fat found in the myelin sheath surrounding nerve fibers. Adequate vitamin K1 supports myelin integrity and nerve conduction velocity. Lutein, a yellow carotenoid that concentrates in both the retina of the eye and in brain tissue, appears to protect neurons from oxidative damage and supports cognitive processing speed. Folate, which is vitamin B9, is essential for 1. Carbon metabolism, a biochemical process critical for DNA repair, neurotransmitter synthesis, and the maintenance of epigenetic marks that regulate gene expression in brain cells. Nitrates, found in high concentrations in leafy greens, especially arugula, spinach, and beet greens, are converted by oral bacteria and gut bacteria into nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a signaling molecule that relaxes blood vessels and improves blood flow. In the brain, better blood flow means better oxygen and nutrient delivery to neurons. Research has shown that dietary nitrates from leafy greens can increase cerebral blood flow to regions of the brain associated with executive function and working memory. This effect appears to be particularly pronounced during sleep when the brain's metabolic demand for oxygen and glucose continues at a high level despite the absence of conscious activity. Alpha-lipoic acid found in spinach and other leafy greens is a unique antioxidant that is both fat-soluble and water-soluble, meaning it can work in virtually every part of the cell, including in lipid membranes and in the watery interior of the cell. It also regenerates other antioxidants, including vitamins C and E, extending their protective activity. Alpha-lipoic acid has been studied in clinical trials for its effects on cognitive function and age-related cognitive decline and has shown promising results. Its ability to cross the blood-brain barrier and work directly in neural tissue makes it particularly relevant to brain health. Eating leafy greens in the evening is easy to incorporate into dinner. A simple salad of arugula or spinach dressed with olive oil and lemon provides significant amounts of all the compounds I have described. Sauteed garlic, spinach, or kale is quick to prepare and pairs beautifully with fish or legumes. Collard greens, braised slowly with a small amount of olive oil and garlic, are a traditional Southern American dish that happens to be nutritionally superb. The key is simply to include them regularly, ideally daily, and ideally in the evening as part of the last meal before sleep. The fifth food is a group that I want to present together because they work through similar mechanisms and are often consumed together. These are nuts and seeds with high magnesium content, specifically almonds, pumpkin seeds, and chia seeds. Magnesium, as I mentioned earlier, is involved in over 300 enzymatic reactions in the body. In the brain, it plays a critical role in sleep quality and neuroplasticity. A study published in the journal Neuron demonstrated that a form of magnesium called magnesium L-threonate, which crosses the blood-brain barrier more effectively than other forms, significantly increased synaptic density and improved memory in aging animals. While this specific form is available as a supplement, dietary magnesium from whole foods still provides meaningful brain protective effects through multiple pathways. Magnesium helps regulate the stress response by modulating the release of cortisol. High cortisol overnight disrupts sleep architecture, suppresses the glymphatic system, and promotes neuroinflammation. Adequate magnesium creates a calmer neurochemical environment at night, supporting deeper, more restorative sleep and better conditions for brain repair. Magnesium also regulates voltage-gated calcium channels in neurons. When magnesium is deficient, these channels can remain open for too long, allowing excessive calcium influx into neurons. Excessive intracellular calcium triggers the release of inflammatory cytokines and can initiate neuronal death. This is one of the mechanisms by which magnesium deficiency contributes to long-term cognitive risk. Pumpkin seeds are one of the richest food sources of magnesium, providing about half the daily recommended intake in a single ounce. They also provide zinc, which is essential for immune function and neurotransmitter regulation, and tryptophan, the amino acid precursor to both serotonin and melatonin. A small handful of pumpkin seeds before bed, perhaps paired with a few walnuts and some Tart cherry juice, creates a genuinely impressive nutritional package for overnight brain support. Almonds provide magnesium, vitamin E, and riboflavin, which is vitamin B2, a nutrient involved in energy metabolism in brain cells. Chia seeds provide omega-3 ALA fiber that feeds the beneficial gut bacteria associated with brain health, calcium, magnesium, and a unique gelatinous fiber called mucilage that slows glucose absorption and supports stable blood sugar overnight. I want to draw a clear picture of how these 5 foods work together as a system because that synergy is important. Tart cherries provide melatonin for sleep onset and anthocyanins for anti-inflammatory protection. Walnuts provide omega-3s, polyphenols, and urolithin precursors for autophagy and cellular repair. Fatty fish provide DHA and EPA for structural brain support and neuroinflammation resolution. Leafy greens provide vitamin K, lutein, nitrates, folate, and alpha-lipoic acid for vascular health, myelin support, and antioxidant protection. Pumpkin seeds, almonds, and chia seeds provide magnesium, tryptophan, zinc, and fiber for sleep depth, stress regulation, and gut-brain health. Together, these foods address virtually every major pathway involved in overnight brain repair. They are not redundant. They are complementary. Each one contributes something that the others do not fully provide. The beautiful thing about this approach is that it does not require you to completely overhaul your diet overnight. No pun intended. These are foods that most Americans can find in any grocery store. They are foods that can be incorporated into meals and snacks you already enjoy. A piece of salmon with a side of sauteed spinach and a handful of walnuts for dessert, followed by a small glass of Tart cherry juice before bed, covers all 5 categories in one evening. And while you sleep, unaware of the extraordinary work happening in your brain, every one of these nutrients is actively supporting the systems that protect your memory, your cognitive clarity, and your long-term brain health. Everything we have discussed so far has been building toward this moment. We understand the science, we understand the foods. Now let us talk about the practical reality of how to actually make this work in everyday life, because knowledge without application is just information. I want to give you a framework for an evening routine based on the same biological principles we have been exploring that you can begin implementing tonight. Not someday. Tonight. Let me start by talking about timing, because this is something most nutrition discussions overlook entirely, and it genuinely matters for brain health. Your body operates on a biological clock called the circadian rhythm. This clock governs virtually every physiological process in your body, including digestion, hormone production, immune function, and brain repair. The circadian rhythm is synchronized primarily by light, but it is also significantly influenced by the timing of meals. When you eat in alignment with your circadian rhythm, your body processes nutrients more efficiently, regulates blood sugar more effectively, and maintains better metabolic health overall. When you eat at times that conflict with your circadian clock, particularly late at night, you create a form of metabolic stress that can disrupt sleep quality, impair overnight repair, and over time contribute to metabolic and cognitive dysfunction. Circadian research suggests that the ideal window for the last meal of the day is roughly 2 to 4 hours before sleep. If you typically go to sleep at 10 o'clock at night, your ideal dinner time would be between 6 and 8 in the evening. This window allows your digestive system to complete most of its work before sleep onset, stabilizes blood sugar before you lie down, and allows insulin levels to begin declining naturally, which, as I mentioned earlier, creates favorable conditions for autophagy. It also prevents the discomfort, acid reflux, and fragmented sleep that many people experience when they eat a large meal right before going to bed. I want to address something that a lot of people over 60 ask about, which is the concern about eating too close to bedtime due to acid reflux or gastroesophageal reflux. This is a real concern, and the timing advice I just gave actually aligns well with managing reflux. Eating your last meal at least 2 to 3 hours before bed and keeping it moderate in size and not excessively high in fat or spice helps prevent the reflux that disturbs sleep for many older adults. When reflux is not disturbing sleep, the brain can progress through its natural sleep cycles more smoothly, spending more time in the deep slow wave sleep and REM sleep stages that support the most important repair processes. Now let us talk about the composition of a brain supportive evening meal, because I want to give you a realistic template that you can adapt to your own tastes and circumstances. The ideal evening meal for brain repair has several characteristics. It provides stable blood sugar through a combination of fiber, healthy fat, and moderate protein. It includes one or more sources of anti-inflammatory omega-3 fatty acids. It includes leafy greens or other polyphenol-rich vegetables. It is moderate in overall calorie load, meaning it is satisfying but not overly heavy, and it avoids or minimizes ingredients that are pro-inflammatory, specifically refined sugars, refined carbohydrates, trans fats, and excessive alcohol. A practical example of this kind of meal would be a fillet of baked or grilled salmon alongside a generous salad of arugula, spinach, and cucumber dressed with extra virgin olive oil and lemon juice with a small portion of quinoa or roasted sweet potato on the side. This meal provides DHA and EPA from the salmon, polyphenols and nitrates from the greens, healthy monounsaturated fats and oleocanthal, an anti-inflammatory compound from the olive oil, and complex carbohydrates that support stable overnight blood sugar from the quinoa or sweet potato. It is delicious. It is satisfying. It is not complicated to prepare, and it is providing your brain with an exceptional toolkit for the repair work ahead. Another excellent example would be a bowl of lentil soup with wilted spennick, topped with a drizzle of olive oil and a sprinkle of pumpkin seeds, served alongside a piece of whole grain sourdough bread. Lentils are rich in folate, B vitamins, and slowly digestible carbohydrates that prevent blood sugar spikes. The spinach provides vitamin K, lutein, and nitrates. The olive oil adds anti-inflammatory polyphenols. The pumpkin seeds add magnesium, zinc, and tryptophan. This is an entirely plant-based meal that still checks nearly every box for brain repair nutrition. For people who want something lighter in the evening, a small bowl of plain whole milk yogurt or kefir, topped with a handful of fresh or frozen mixed berries, some crushed walnuts, and a teaspoon of ground chia seeds is an outstanding option. The yogurt or kefir provides probiotics that support the gut microbiome and indirectly support the gut-brain axis. The berries provide anthocyanins and other polyphenols. The walnuts provide omega-3s and neuroleptin precursors. The chia seeds provide fiber, magnesium, and additional omega-3 ALA. This is more of a snack or light supper that works beautifully as a before-bed option when the main dinner has already been eaten earlier. Now, I want to talk about alcohol because it deserves an honest discussion. Many Americans have a habit of having a glass of wine or beer with dinner or in the evening, and I want to give you accurate information without being preachy about it. Alcohol is a central nervous system depressant, and while it may help some people fall asleep faster, it consistently disrupts sleep architecture. Specifically, alcohol suppresses REM sleep and interferes with the deeper stages of slow wave sleep. As you now know, both of these sleep stages are critical for brain repair. REM sleep is essential for memory consolidation. Slow wave sleep is essential for glymphatic cleaning. When alcohol disrupts these stages, it does not just affect how rested you feel. It materially impairs the brain's overnight repair capacity. Even moderate alcohol consumption in the evening has been shown in research to reduce sleep quality and alter sleep architecture in measurable ways. I am not saying you must never drink alcohol. I am saying that if cognitive protection and brain health are priorities for you, The evidence suggests that drinking alcohol close to bedtime is directly counterproductive to those goals. If you choose to drink, doing so earlier in the evening, allowing more time before sleep, and keeping quantities moderate will minimize the impact on your overnight brain repair. A glass of red wine, if consumed, does provide some resveratrol, a polyphenol associated with neuroprotective effects, but the disruption to sleep quality from the alcohol content likely outweighs this benefit when the wine is consumed close to bedtime. Let me also address caffeine because this affects brain health in ways that are not always fully appreciated. Caffeine has a half-life in the body of approximately 5 to 6 hours. This means that if you drink a cup of coffee at 3 in the afternoon, half of that caffeine is still circulating in your system at 8 or 9 in the evening. For some people, particularly those who metabolize caffeine more slowly due to genetic variation, the half-life is even longer. Caffeine works by blocking adenosine receptors in the brain. Adenosine is a chemical that builds up during waking hours and creates increasing feelings of sleepiness. It is one of the signals that tells your brain it is time to sleep. When caffeine blocks adenosine receptors, you override this signal. But the adenosine does not disappear. It continues to build up. When the caffeine eventually wears off, all of that accumulated adenosine floods the receptors simultaneously, which is why many people experience a sharp energy crash in the late afternoon. More importantly, if caffeine is still in your system at bedtime, it reduces sleep pressure, the biological drive to sleep, and can delay sleep onset, reduce deep sleep duration, and impair the very repair processes we have been discussing. Cutting off caffeine intake by early afternoon, typically by 2 o'clock, is one of the most impactful single lifestyle changes most Americans can make for sleep quality and therefore brain health. This single adjustment, combined with the dietary changes we have discussed, can meaningfully improve the depth and restorative value of your sleep without any medication or supplementation. Exercise is another lifestyle factor that deserves mention in the context of overnight brain repair. Moderate aerobic exercise, even a 30-minute walk, increases the production of BDNF, the brain fertilizer protein I mentioned earlier. It improves blood flow to the brain, enhances sleep quality by increasing the proportion of deep sleep, and reduces systemic inflammation. The timing of exercise relative to sleep matters. Vigorous exercise within 2 to 3 hours of bedtime can elevate core body temperature and adrenaline levels in ways that delay sleep onset for some people. Morning or early afternoon exercise tends to provide the greatest benefit for sleep quality. A gentle evening walk, however, can actually be beneficial, helping to regulate blood sugar after dinner, support digestion, and reduce cortisol levels, all of which contribute to better overnight brain repair conditions. Stress management in the evening hours is another factor that directly impacts what happens in the brain at night. The stress hormone cortisol is profoundly disruptive to sleep architecture. It is part of the arousal system designed to keep you alert and ready to respond to threats. When cortisol levels remain elevated in the evening due to chronic stress, anxiety, or excessive stimulation,